Hi, I'm James Dunn. Welcome to the Inside Network.
Welcome to INDepth, and my guest is Henry Elgood, Chief Risk Officer and Head of Investments Fixed Income at Trilogy Funds. Henry, welcome to INDepth.
Thanks, James.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Henry, Trilogy Funds is best known for its mortgage and property-backed investments, but could you expand on the investment process behind the Trilogy Enhanced Income Fund?
Sure. So the Trilogy Enhanced Income Fund has two core pillars. There's 135% exposure to our pooled mortgage fund, the Trilogy Monthly Income Trust. This is a pooled mortgage fund that has exposure and security via registered first mortgages over property developments up and down the east coast of Australia primarily. The other 65% of the fund is invested in cash style and other financial assets. And this includes things like floating rate notes held directly via a mandate or indirectly via other registered managed investment schemes or unregistered managed investment schemes as well. What we look for in terms of our investment process is three things. It's around liquidity at the underlying security level. It's around the investment grade quality of those fixed income instruments, and also then around the volatility of those instruments. So we try to minimize the volatility across the portfolio, of course, while trying to design and provide a competitive income stream to our investor base through this vehicle.
Having built a successful business with property-based funds, what drove Trilogy Funds to expand into the fixed income and credit markets?
Well, we opened the fund up to investments in early 2017 via an offering to our investor base. We'd heard from our investor base that they were looking for a product that again took on board our ability to assess credit via our mortgage assessment and transitioning that across to more traditional fixed income instruments with a shorter liquidity timeframe than what was offered via our Trilogy Monthly Income Trust. So we thought that the investment would be a good complement to the existing product suite that we had on offer, while again maintaining an investment grade focus on that fixed income component of the fund, with a competitive advantage being that exposure to our monthly income trust.
Henry, downside and credit risk are clearly among the most important parts of your role, but also the investment considerations in fixed income investments are very important. But what are the crucial risk management and mitigation strategies you employ?
Well, for us, a couple of things. Firstly, concentration risk. Given that we do invest across a number of managers and via a mandate, we don't want to be heavily concentrated on the same underlying security or pool of securities that different managers may invest in, or that our mandate may be able to invest and hold directly. So what we do is that we're constantly reviewing the terms. We're just sitting down and discussing with those underlying managers where they see it. That being the market, what their investment strategy looks like, and any significant changes. At the same time, with our mandate, for example, we're constantly adjusting and reviewing the terms of that mandate. So, for example, last year, we brought the duration down in that mandate as we didn't feel that we needed to have that longer term duration exposure, particularly when there was volatility within the market. And that held us well going through to this part of the market now, and going forward, we think is a prudent move.
How has your experience guided the management of the Trilogy Enhanced Income Fund strategy, and what competitive advantages would you say it brings?
Well, I think with my experience, it's only a quantitative background, a quantitative focus, but we have a broad understanding and knowledge base across our investment committee and also across the underlying investment team. So that time in market and that time through cycles is critical, and something that I certainly lean upon with my colleagues in our investment committee, with our ability to assess credit risk at an underlying core security or core manager level. That's certainly where our team plays into its strengths, but being able to communicate and also articulate why we're making an investment decision for what purpose to our investor base is critical. Given we are looking at more of a fund-of-fund structure, and we do have many diversified income sources, it's being able to articulate why each source complements one another.
Henry, the passive versus active debate has raged for decades when it comes to equity markets, but less so in fixed income, despite today's unique circumstances. How important do you think that active management is going to be within fixed income over the next, say, 10 years?
I think there'll always be a place for active management within fixed income markets. And I look at the market as we sit now and how central banks globally hold such a portion of government and also credit debt out there in the market, and how that's unwound and how the market comes to be a bit more of a greater supply to those traditional private investors and typical institutional investors outside of central banks will be rather critical. I think that passive investment, again, has its strengths, and again, it comes down to the type of investor I think that you are. But being able to take advantage of opportunities that do present themselves, particularly as this unwind begins, will be rather important for an active management and an active hand when doing that. I think rather than relying on quantitative algorithms via a passive approach, typically to seize upon those opportunities.
There's a growing chorus of experts suggesting that the traditional fixed income allocation within balanced portfolios is failing investors, failing to perform its traditional role and should be removed. What's your view on that? And what do you believe, if that is the case, what do you believe is the solution?
I think we've seen a distortion within the fixed income market given the hand that central banks have had over the past couple of years. I think that in terms of whether it's a traditional exposure that's always kept in investors' portfolios, that will ultimately come down to the individual investor and their risk appetite. I think where there is benefit is being able to bring together a portfolio either via one investment solution or multiple, which touch upon different areas across the whole fixed income and credit spectrum, and is able to strategically allocate and combine that to provide one overall solution, which again, I think our diversified income fund, our enhanced income fund in Trilogy is able to do. It takes away that strategic allocation requirement, the underlying investor level, and allows us to do that based upon what we see in the market versus what we think is a good complementary mix of managers and exposures.
I've gone in depth with Henry Elgood from Trilogy Funds. Henry, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, James.